Let's see the types of constructor. Types of constructors. Let's discuss the types of constructor one by one. Okay. So types of constructor. So based on creating objects in Java, we have two types of constructors. So based on creating the object in Java, we have two types of constructors. They are default constructors, default constructors, and parameterized constructor, constructor, parameterized constructor, default constructor, and parameterized constructor. So, what is default constructor? So, let's see what is default constructor. So, default constructor. So, default constructor is also called as parameterless constructor or no argument constructor. No arguments constructor or zero arguments constructor. Zero arguments constructor. Okay, fine. So, how to identify a constructor is a default constructor or not? A default constructor. So, let's see. A default constructor is one which will not take any parameters. Which will not take any parameters. Let's see a syntax first. Let's see a syntax. By syntax, I'll explain you. So let's say we have a class. Let's say we have a class. I'll have a class name and the braces, and we have a default constructor. So default constructor doesn't have any name. Sorry, any arguments. Okay, and this is public. So a default constructor is one which doesn't have any arguments defined in the parameters. So these are the parentheses. So in this one, if it doesn't have any parameters like this, if it doesn't have any parameters, something like this is an example. So we can consider as this is a default constructor. Or we can say that if a default constructor is one, if it doesn't have any arguments, we used to call these are the arguments. What are the things we are defining inside the braces in the brackets? We used to call it as a, arguments. Okay. So if we doesn't have any arguments, we can say that no arguments constructor or zero argument constructor. We can say that. Okay. Or we can say that we used to call it as in computer language, we used to call it as a parameters. Okay. Here we are passing some parameters. If the constructor doesn't have any parameters, we can consider that constructor as a parameterless constructor or a default constructor. Let's see an example of the default constructor. Okay. So let's see an example. Let's say we have a class called employee. Employee class product is product. So product will be having the product ID. I'll say PID, and the product will be having the name and the quantity. Name, and it will be having the quantity. So I'll be find the size. So quantity as in quantity. Okay. So for this, I'll be creating the default constructor. So product inside this, I'll say PID. I'll be initializing the values for the product ID. Product ID is 1. Name equals to, let's say, JBL Bluetooth speaker. Okay. Quantity, I need 1. That's it. So you can display this using the sysout product ID in double quotations. Product ID is plus PID. So here I have to give this small p because I have given small p over here. Here also it is small p. SOT, and we have the product name. I'll give this as a name, and we'll be displaying the quantity. Okay, plus quantity. You can see I have created a constructor. This is a what constructor? Zero parameter constructor because it doesn't have any parameters, and I have declared some. I have performed some operations over here. What I did is I have initialized the values for these actual parameters are the variables. Okay, so I have initialized the PID for PID equals to 1, quantity name equals to some JBL Bluetooth speaker, and quantity is 1. And I have written the sysouts to display the things. Okay, fine. So let me write a program. Let me copy paste this one in my to my IntelliJ. Let's execute this one, and this should be public. It should be public. Okay, let's copy this and run it in our IntelliJ. Let's come here. Let's create a new package. I'll give this package as constructors examples. Okay. So now I'll create a class. I'll create a class called employee. Sorry, product, right? So I'll create a class called product. Okay. So product. So in product, I have to define the things. Here I'll remove this class name because I have already given the class name, and I removed this one. Okay, fine. So sysout, it will be let's copy this one entirely and paste it over here. P and paste. PID here. ID is in ID. I is capital. Here I missed it. ID. And let's format the code. Control Alt L for the if you are using IntelliJ. If you are using Eclipse, it should be Control Shift F. Okay, fine, right? So we have a class called product, and we have some no data members are variables, or the actual parameters, that's PID, name, and quantity, and we are initializing some values over here for the PID and name, and we are giving the quantity as well. So, and we are displaying the values. Let's write a client app for this one, and let's execute the product one. So let's write the client application, product client app. Okay, product client app. So I'll say main. Cool. So I'll be creating an object of product. So class name, object name goes to product, new product. That's fine. So I'll say product. I don't need to do that because see, JVM will call this constructor automatically. Let's see, let's execute this one. Let's run as Java application. So you can see the output over here. So you can see the product ID, quantity, product ID, name, and quantity. See, simple, right? We are not making a call. We are just creating an object of the product. Okay, JVM is calling that constructor. Okay, so if I put control and if I press control and put my cursor over here, it is pointing to the product constructor in product class. See, it will execute this one. Okay, fine. Okay. So let's stop it
Yes,
over
sir.
here. Let's stop it over here. In the next video, we will be seeing the parameterized constructor.